Hello. Welcome to the PTO Club podcast. I'm your host, Adam Robin. And today I've got a really good friend of mine. Brian, we've been knowing each other for like 5 years now.
I know.
My friend
Time
Brian
flies.
Widener with Career Tree Network. What's up, Brian? How are you today?
Hey, Adam. Doing great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's really good to see you. I thought it would be awesome to bring you on because, we just started working together more this year. And
Mhm.
I've been learning a little bit more about what you're doing on the recruiting side. I know you got some new things happening in your company, and recruiting is always kind of like a special thing for me because I really enjoy doing it. One of the things that kind of fascinates me, or that I'm really interested in hearing your perspective about is, you've built a career providing outsourced solutions for a lot of these practice owners, like building recruiting solutions, outsourced solutions
hmm
for practice owners. And obviously, you've had some success with that. But more recently, you and I have been talking, and you've been telling me that you're actually finding even greater results whenever you can help owners create an internal solution, an internal recruiting solution to help them build their team and scale their practices that way. And yeah, I'd love to just kind of dive into that topic and hear a little bit more about your perspective there and see what we can learn.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think when you think about recruiting, it's really all about relationships, and it's about the relationship that the candidate has ultimately with the employer brand, the owner, the physical therapists at that location. And it's about building that relationship with the potential candidate so that they know, they like, they trust the organization and the employer brand. And we started our company in 2007. My wife's a PT. We just recruit PTs nationwide. Worked with a lot of practices, all shapes and sizes. And historically, we were called in to just deliver candidates, just send me people to interview, send me those relationships that are already formed, introduce me to PTs to join my team. And that's been really like the legacy of our company. Um, and what we found is along the way, we've learned that not all PTs want to work with recruiters. So, we do things a little differently. We try not to play the same recruiting games in terms of like some of the secrecy and different tricks and things that a recruiter might do. But ultimately, PTs prefer to work and build a relationship directly with someone at the clinic, whether it's the clinic owner or the rehab manager, the office manager, someone they can kind of get the fast track and go right to the top. And so we've been thinking about really how to help our clients build better relationships with candidates. And ultimately, as well, it's really a long-term play too, where, it's kind of like that quote, like the best time to plant a tree is yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the second best time is today, but um, or if you're thinking about like going out and you're in pretty decent shape, but myself, if I have a vacation planned in the future, I might try and like, you know, work out, do a little extra running or something to
Mm-hmm.
get into my beach body.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you need a little time to build those relationships. And when a clinic has the hiring need at a certain point in time, it's really difficult to develop relationships and deliver candidates within that short window. Like, oh my gosh, my PT gave notice. I need
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
candidates now,
Mm-hmm.
right now. I need candidates. And it's like, okay, well, that's really challenging. Whereas if you had been planting that tree, if you had planted those seeds earlier, if you had started your beach body workout, 3 months earlier, then, you'd have a better foundation of recruitment for your current needs. So really the idea behind what we're doing with some of our new programs is around like how can we support and enhance the clinic owners so that they're having that recruitment mindset and they're able to build that recruitment function so that they can really have on-demand talent and those relationships um, for their current and future needs, especially for growth needs as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so cool because I had a coaching call, me and a couple of our clients, well, so a handful of our clients yesterday, some of our younger, like our smaller practices. And, I asked the question, I said, what's the most important resource that you have in your business? And some people said, my team or, my patients, right? And in my opinion, the most important resource in your business is the owner's attention, right? It's like what you focus on is what grows or what improves or what gets that's what you're gonna make progress in, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like it's amazing to hear you say how bringing the focus back, it's like the owner's always the problem and the owner's always the solution, right? It's like you're always the problem, you're always the solution. And it's amazing to hear you say that bringing the attention back, it all comes back to the owner. Like getting them to focus on the recruiting is what is going to ultimately help them get the results, you know?
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
ultimately, like we're in the business of people and, as a physical therapy clinic, you know, business, the more physical therapists you have, the more people that you're going to serve in your community. So, we can't like outsource the care to AI or something. Like we need clinicians to provide the service. And so really like understanding your local talent pool and building relationships with your local talent pool is really central to your business. I mean, it's and some PTs are willing to relocate. Some new grads are always coming out, on the market. But ultimately, what is the relationship that you have with the local PTs in your community? Like, what are you
mm,
doing to support the local PT community?
and
Um,
that's really something that's hard to do
mhm.
as a recruiter who's across the country. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like you can provide a ton of value, but like there's some depth of relationship in that local pool that's going to be ultimately the owner is going to be the best person to do that, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
you know,
Right.
and it's also like my question for you is like you work with a lot of owners, and I couldn't agree with you more that coming back to the attention piece, like getting the owner focused, like you only have so many priorities. you know, if you're a really great productive person, you can maybe have three in your
Hmm.
business, right? But one of those has to be recruiting. If you're the owner of the business, one of those has to be recruiting. And it really is something that never goes away, but it gets replaced with stuff, right? What happens is we get busy and the owners lose like that recruiting thing never becomes like sometimes it's not always the most urgent thing and it gets replaced with things that are more urgent. So like what are some of the things that you're seeing that owners are having a hard time with? Like, why are they not focused on the recruiting piece? Is it because
Hmm.
they're busy? Is it because they don't have the skill set? Like where's the disconnect?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think you're right about areas of focus, and I think recruiting should be an area of focus, but I would maybe challenge us to expand that a little bit to that when you're focusing on recruiting, it's not only recruiting makes it sound like it's only like new people, like externally focused. And I think a lot of times maybe we don't call it recruiting, but we're building ongoing employee relationships because your current staff, we want to focus on retaining your current staff, not just so maybe it's recruiting slash, relationship
Mm-hmm.
development
Mm-hmm.
with employees or something along those lines to make sure that we look at it, and I see recruiting, ultimately, like I say, it's building relationships. And I think we always want to build relationships and strengthen relationships with prospective candidates and people that are already on our team, just for longevity and retention. But I think from a employer perspective, from a clinic owner perspective, the struggle on recruiting is that when they're fully staffed, it's not on their mind. So if you feel like your clinic is fully staffed, yeah, you might have growth hires in the future, but there's not like an interest to always be recruiting. There's this illusion that I'm fully staffed, my team isn't going anywhere, and I don't have any need to recruit because I'm fully staffed. And so why
Hmm.
why why would I do anything recruiting
Hmm.
wise if I don't
Hmm.
have any need? And so that part is a struggle. I mean, on the flip side though, if you have growth hires that you want to make, people are leaving jobs, PTs are leaving jobs all the time right now, for a variety of reasons. So, and also the lead time when a PT gives notice, they're going to give you, 2 weeks notice or 4 weeks notice, and it might take, 3 months or longer for you to find the ideal candidate. So if you're not always recruiting and always having some recruitment presence, when the person does give notice or when you do decide to grow or when an opportunity presents itself for you to purchase something, another clinic down the road, or, you're not going to be ready to take on that. So I feel like on some level, every clinic should always be recruiting and always having feelers out there, even if it's just like a minimal level.
Hmm. Yeah, I like what you said about that. Because the demand, right? The demand for how many therapists you need to hire is constantly changing. Maybe not always constantly, but like you said, like opportunities come. Opportunity equals I need to hire. Or somebody quits and that means I need to hire. Or if I'm fully staffed, I don't necessarily need to hire right now. Right. So there's like this, like, green is like I'm fully staffed. I don't really need to hire, but there is some level of recruiting that should be taking place on a week by week basis. But maybe that's only like 2 hours a week. So like fully staffed is green. Therefore, you have 2 hours a week of recruiting. Maybe you have an opportunity coming up, and you know that you're going to need a therapist in, let's say, 6 months. Well, maybe that's like the yellow. So maybe you need to
Mm,
kick that up from 2 hours a week to 5 hours a week. Right. So you have your green at 2 hours a week, your yellows at 5 hours a week. And now let's say somebody just quit. Now you're in red. Now you need to be recruiting like 20 hours a week to make
mhm.
sure. So like I think it's important for owners to have that temperature gauge of like, where are you, and kind of audit that on a month by month basis. Like, where are you with that temperature and how many hours a week? I say hours per week, but you can say hours per month or whatever it is. Do you need to be spending outside of patient care, outside of everything else, fully focused on recruiting, and just kind of audit that process every month? And
Mm,
that's kind of the thing that kind of keeps you on top of those things instead of like underneath it.
right. Yeah, I think in terms of, a question that someone might have is, okay, I'm spending, 2 hours a week on recruiting. What am I doing during that time? And the answer could be a variety of things. I don't know what you would suggest, but from my end, I think about, building relationships with the target audience in terms of maybe you, sponsor a student 5K race and you get, your company logo on the back of a t-shirt for your local PT school, or you, get a list of people who attended the state conference and you send them a message, praising them for their commitment to professional development and sharing, how that's a priority for your practice as well. And you're fully staffed right now, but you're always looking to build relationships with people for growth positions. So if you're open to chatting with me further, please let me know. So I think the idea is around being proactive, being out there, and maybe you're fully staffed, but it's this idea of like, do you still value this relationship development, and how do you go about planting those seeds for the future? And it doesn't have to be a lot of things, but when you have that foundation of activity out there, like you're suggesting, it's going to really benefit you. And then also, if you have that list or that database that you might be using to keep track of those potentials, then you can follow up with those guys. Hey, I emailed you 6 months ago after you attended that conference. At that time, I didn't have any needs on my team, but we're growing and we just have a position opening up. Wanted to reach back out to you and see if now is a good time for you to consider joining us.
Mhm.
So you can follow up on that past communication as well, which is really all about that relationship building again.
Yeah. So I've kind of, obviously I've been doing a lot of coaching lately. So it's been super fun because I've been like really, really spending a lot of deep thinking about our profession and the mindset of the owner and trying to help get clear on like the struggles that they're having. And I've been using this framework to describe recruiting lately, and I kind of want to get your opinion on it. So I see a lot of owners, well, not a lot of owners, most owners, all owners, they're kind of like they're the superstars of their little circle, right? Because they're quick starters, they have a lot of ideas, they're typically very talented, smart people, they're charismatic in a lot of ways. And when they opened their practice, they had to learn this skill of like, how do I get people to like me? How do I get patients to like me? Right? So they bring them in and they say, "Hey, how you doing, Brian? It's nice to see you. Well, thank you so much for trusting us with your care. I'm going to take care of you and I'm going to make sure you're happy. I'm going to make sure that I follow up with you and send you an email and that I ask you, I ask for your feedback, right? And like I'm going to nurture that relationship with you because I know that if you're happy, then you're going to send me referrals and that my practice is probably going to grow, right? There's a skill to that. There's a savviness to that that owners naturally have. And so what I've been saying is like take all of that energy and all that mindset and that focus, remove it from the patients and just put it towards recruits like candidates.
Hmm.
It's the
Right.
same skill set. It's the exact same skill set, right? So like what you do is like teach your team how to do that. Like you've mastered that internal marketing and sales piece of what you do in your business. You teach your team how to do that. Now you can back away and focus on the bigger vision for your company, which is the people who you're going to bring on into your team,
Mm,
right? How do you nurture them? How do you get them to like you? How do you serve them? How do you follow up with them and send them emails? How do you get referrals from that list? It's the same exact skill set, just a little bit different language. So I
mm.
always say, like, take that marketing and sales program that you have built, cross it out, and just put the word recruiting on the top. And now you have a pretty good recruiting program too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. I mean, I like the white glove treatment that you're describing when we look at candidates and potential hires. I feel like there's an old school mindset of recruiting and interviewing where we want to, kind of put the candidate on the spot and
Mm-hmm.
drill them with tough interview questions. Why should I hire you? Tell me about, your most challenging clinical and what was a pressure situation that you were in. And we want to try and like put people in the hot seat, so to speak. And that way when we interview them, we're going to kind of separate the best candidates and those that are um, able to prove themselves that they're worthy of joining our team. And that's an okay mindset if you have a lot of people applying. maybe, and you have a
Right.
lot of candidates,
And that's not the culture. That's
but
not the climate. People have
right.
options.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean that service, that customer service mindset, what you're describing, I think is really key. And ultimately it's kind of humbling because then that rolls into like flexibility as well, among the employer, um, do I really need someone with 3 years of experience? Or if we have someone with 1 year of experience, is that sufficient? Or, like that level of flexibility and chatting with candidates. And it's becoming more and more challenging, I think, as well, because, PTs are not necessarily looking for the same things that they did 5 or 10 years ago. There's a shift within what I'm hearing from candidates among the talent pool that we're talking with, and it's, maybe they're no longer interested in 40 hours a week. Maybe they want, 32 hours a week. Is that a possibility? But yeah, just to kind of bring it back to your point, yeah, like this white glove treatment. I mean, we all want to be treated well, and we all want our skills to be valued. We don't really want to go through like a tough interview process. Even if you're like a rock star, you don't want to be like sweating, when you're talking to a potential employer. Um, and I feel like your relationship approach is really spot on.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I think that's really key. And I've found tremendous amounts of success with that approach.
Hmm.
Just it's like instead of looking for limitations with candidates, instead of looking for reasons to not hire them, because like you said, they want X or they don't have this qualification or they're whatever, like look for possibility. So like don't look for limitations, look for what's possible. Like look for what you can create. Like don't hire them for where they are, hire them for where you want to go. You
Right.
know, because you can train anything. You could train on anything. You could train anybody to do anything, right? So, my favorite quote is not my favorite quote, but one of my favorite quotes with recruiting is, hire for personality and train for skill.
Hmm.
Find the person who has the personality, and maybe they don't have all the credentials, and maybe they don't have the experience, or maybe they do come with some things that are going to require you to be a little bit flexible, but they have the personality for growth. They align with your culture, and they're willing to do hard things with you. So it's like you can create anything with that person, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I think it's really important to look for possibility, understand what your vision is for the company, look for possibility, and then enroll that person in the idea of helping you go in that direction, right?
Hmm.
I think that's key. I think that's super key.
Yeah. Right.
Um, I do have another question for you. It's my turn to ask the questions. Because you mentioned this right before we pressed record, and I was like, that's a really good point, right? Because I'm at this stage in my business. I've got 3 locations. I'm doing a lot of recruiting right now, and it's really all I do for the most part. But it's a lot. Recruiting's a lot, especially when you have 30 employees and you're growing. And we've all we hit that point where like we understand that the owner is a big piece to that recruiting success. However, I can't do this forever. I need to find ways to attract candidates to my company without being attracted to Adam Robin,
Hmm.
right? It's kind of like that time where you were the physical therapist and all the doctors would write Brian Widener on the script,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
And it's like, no, well, you need to see my other new PT, right? Like that transition. Like, how do you do that? How do you get the focus off of Adam
Right.
and more on like choose my company because of who we are as a company? Like, how do you do that? Can you talk us
Yeah.
through that?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. And yeah, I think you're right. Um, as the company is small, and if you have one clinic location, ultimately when the PT is joining your team, they're going to be working side by side with you, as the clinic owner.
Mhm.
And So your relationship that you develop with that candidate is really key. And the candidate may be joining because you're dynamic and you seem like a good mentor, and they're joining to work specifically for you as an individual. And I think that works for a period of time. However, the real goal is probably, since you are the owner of the clinic, the real goal is for you to not be so side by side in the clinic, and for you to pursue growth and, let your business flourish. And in order for that to happen, like you were saying, over time, the candidates are going to be joining a company less because of the ability to work with you, because you're not physically there. Right
Right.
now you have how many employees working, and you're with me, you're not with them.
Right. Right.
And that's the same in like a hospital system. I mean, do new physical therapists join a hospital because the CEO is dynamic? Like, no, like they don't even know who the CEO is. They never met him, I mean, or her. Um, and so yeah, as your company grows, the individual personalities and the individual people become less and less important. And I think regardless of your size, I feel like that's an important transition to take place, because even if you are a small practice with one location, you don't really want someone joining to specifically work with you. You want someone who's going to be joining your company, because what happens if, you decide to open up a second location and then you're
Mhm.
no longer there? Is that
Mhm.
PT going to leave because you're at the second location?
Mhm.
Or what if you get hit by a bus, or you decide that you want to go part-time, or whatever. Like you want your staff to be feeling like they're connected to the company, to the employer brand, rather than to you as an individual. And you want the employer brand to be strong, because you don't want employees to feel that their livelihood is at the whim of the employer. So if Adam decides all of a sudden that we have to wear, pink shirts for our dress code, it's
Real
just
men wear
like,
pink.
yeah, yeah, like like you want to be like part of like this organized system where the owner is the one driving the bus, but there's engines and there's steering wheels and there's other things that are in place to help the owner, so that it's not just like the owner's whim, what happens. And really we're talking about the employer brand. And that's, as I think of, and the employer brand is really important, because as new grads or PTs in general, as they start to think about, okay, I'm going to be looking for a new job, where would I where might I want to work? They're going to be in their head thinking about, okay, who are the employers that I'm familiar with? Who are the employers that I know, that I like, that I trust? And you want your practice to be on that mind, the, on that mental list. And that's really the employer brand is, and they're not thinking about who do I want to go work with? It's which organizations should I consider joining? And I think the idea around the employer brand is around, what's important to you as a company. So like, what values do you have, and making sure that your values are listed within the job advertisements or on your website. Um, Having things, having multiple people involved in the interview process as well. So if you're the
Yes.
decision maker, that's fine, obviously, for you to be involved, but you need to have, multiple people, so that the new potential hire doesn't think, hey, it's just this one guy who's calling all the shots and doing everything. So you want to try and, yeah, think of yourself as like, yes, you're the owner, but really you're the employer brand. You're like the facilitator of the employer brand, but there's this larger, system in place. It's not just you. And I think
Mhm.
that'll be a big help, because also, for stability reasons, PTs don't really want to join like a really small organization that's not going to be stable. They really
Right.
want, we like above all, we want stability, from our employer. We want to know like, okay, it's going to be consistent. It's going to be like if I order, from Starbucks, if I order the flat white or the cappuccino, it's going to taste basically the same every time that I get it.
Hmm.
That's kind of
Hmm.
the mentality with employees. Like they want that stability. And that all comes from the employer brand.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm glad to hear you talk about that because I have stepped out of some of the recruiting process in a lot of ways because I don't do all the interviews anymore, or really many of them at all. I don't do the offers. The thing that I'm having a harder time getting out of, and probably I'm gonna leverage you and your new program with, is how to generate more leads, how to generate more interviews, right? So
Mm.
like I'm still have my hands in that process, but you were telling me that you've got a new program now, or newer, where you're actually helping owners create that inside their practices. Is that right? Some type of system where they can actually
Yeah.
generate more candidate leads internally. Can you tell
Hmm.
us a little bit about like what that looks like and how that's set up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the program is called Engage Hire. And the idea is that we can help our clients build an internal recruitment function. So we can provide them with the tools, the templates, the data, and the support so that they can perform recruiter slash headhunter type activities, but they can
Yeah.
do that internally.
Yeah.
And the backbone of it is our geo-targeted report that we create, which is basically a list of possible candidates who live near the work location. And we're using licensure data and a bunch of other data sources to come up with, okay, here's a list of the PTs who live near the work location. And then my team researches those folks via LinkedIn to get LinkedIn accounts, cell numbers, email addresses, so that we're coming up with contact channels. And then during the Engage Hire program, we're providing the templates in terms of what to say when you're calling out to candidates, what to say within emails and texts. And we're developing with the owner and with the team a system of recruitment so that they can recruit internally. And it's really a collaborative model. So you mentioned like you not being involved. I
Hmm.
think the owner should, or at least a rehab manager or a clinic manager, someone, at the top layers should be involved. But that first level of outreach doesn't have to be the clinic owner. It can be like a front desk person or an office manager because there's a lot of time involved, as
Yes.
you know, with recruiting, sending out messages. And so we're basically leveraging help from that internal person on the client team to do that first round of outreach. And then when someone's interested, then the clinic owner or clinic manager would come and take over that relationship and move the candidate through the process. But the idea is that, again, like we talked about at the beginning of our conversation, who's going to build the relationship with those possible candidates? Is it me and my team from Wisconsin, or is it, your team who lives down the street from the ideal candidate? And ultimately, I do think it's better, as humbling as it is for me to say, like, I do think it's better for the internal clinic owner or clinic manager or someone at the clinic site to build those relationships because ultimately, it's going to be more effective and then you'll have that long-term potential for the future as well.
Hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, because there's not a whole lot of people in our space doing that. So yeah, especially for like busy, busy practice owners who are just slammed with patient care and don't really have the time to implement or build something from scratch.
Mhm.
Like that's an awesome resource. Super awesome resource.
Yeah, I mean, and there are other resources out there. I mean, there's a lot of, recruitment tools and a lot of, consultants and people that'll talk about recruiting. But I think where this program is different is that we're really focused in on that geo-targeted report of the potential candidates who are living near the work location, because our process has always been data driven. It's just in the past, my team would utilize that report and that data and make the outbound activity, the outreaches. And so there's a lot of like consulting and, okay, here's what you say when a candidate from Indeed applies for your job. And it's like, from our perspective, it's like, yeah, we do need to have Indeed and, online job ads running. But at the same time, we need to do more. We
Yeah.
can't just wait for candidates to come in.
I'm
And
glad you
if we're
said
going to
that.
do more, yeah, what are we going to do? And that's the idea of proactive recruiting. It's around, you know, taking initiative to make that outbound activity and doing it in a way that makes sense and that collaborative nature as well, so that, the clinic owner is only spending time with the candidates that are really viable.
Mhm, mhm. Yes. We have our profession, we have, like, we're, like, bleeding heart, compassionate people, and, like, we don't wanna be weird, we don't wanna be creepy, like, people who just kinda, like, cold call you or cold DM you or cold email you.
Hmm.
There's a little bit of discomfort there that you have to there's, like, a little bit of mindset shift that you have to get over in order to, like, step into that place of vulnerability of, like, "Hey, Brian, like, saw you're a PT in the area, I wanna chat," you know?
Hmm.
Uh, and I would say that many of the clients I work with struggle with that, and my answer to them is like, just tell that voice to shut up. Just tell that voice to shut up, do it anyway, and just be violent. Like, just go after it. And if they're not interested, they won't respond. You know what I mean? And I think there
Yeah.
is like a numbers game. Like, you got to get more hooks in the water.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've heard owners say that, like they don't want to poach
Right,
talent,
right, right, right.
from other people. And really what we're doing with recruiting is, we're planting seeds and we're building relationships. And if someone says, "Hey, I'm retired, I'm happy in my current role, I would never leave the skilled nursing setting, and you're an outpatient clinic," so people are going to tell you different things. You're not really, poaching people. You're just trying to figure out, hey, like, are you really happy at your current position? If you were going to leave your current role, like, why would you do so?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
how's everything going? Like, is there any potential for us to, work together down the road? And maybe there is, maybe there's not, but we're trying to really figure that out through the recruiting process. So it's not like, at least the way that my team looks at recruiting, it's not like this like sleazy, car salesman type thing where you're,
Right.
you know, what would it take for you to drive off the lot
Yes.
with this car,
A $10,000 sign-on bonus. Sign now, call now, apply now. It's not
Right,
one of
right.
those deals, right? Yeah, no, I'm totally
Yeah.
on board with that. I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of like figuring out, yeah, is there a path forward, and looking at it from a place of curiosity, you know,
Yes.
like, yeah, to me, we had, so we're doing our total talent masterclass, which I know, Adam, you've
Yeah.
been a part of, and thank you for
Uh,
doing that.
sure.
And we had Perry Ashley on. She might be someone good for you to talk with, actually. She's a mental health coach and business coach for, like, kind of positive thinking and that kind of stuff. And um, she talks a lot about like curiosity and coming into relationships with that spirit of curiosity. And that I think is really key for recruiting, and for an owner that's scared about or apprehensive around making that outbound activity. It's really about just being curious. Like, is there a possibility here? Like, are you at a point where you might consider a new position? Maybe they are. Yeah, because otherwise, what options do we have, right? We're just going to wait. We're going to post the job and we're going to wait for someone to apply. And
Mhm.
or we're going to work on our employer brand. We're going to go to career fairs. We're going to sponsor the 5K run at the PT school, and we're going to, do some stuff marketing wise that might help us. But it's like, we need to go out and have conversations with the potential candidates, and we know who they are. And that's the beauty of recruiting PTs, is that we have the licensure data. and my team, we have it for all 50 states. So we know, all the PTs across the US, we know who they are. And I'm not saying that in like a creepy way,
We know where they live.
but like, but like
We know
we,
where they work.
through the data that came off wrong. Uh,
That's
but
funny.
through this data though, like we know who the PTs are. We don't have to hope that those PTs go on to the internet, search for PT positions near me and find our
Right.
job ad. We can go out and contact them and say, hey, I noticed I'm searching for PTs in the area. I noticed your name on my list here. I just wanted to reach out, see if it might make sense. Are you open to considering a new role?
Yeah. Yeah. I love the tone of curiosity. And the way I'll often describe it is, approach it from a place where approach it as if you have no place to get. Right. So like if you approach the conversation with, I need to try to get this higher, now you have a place to get. Now you're a creep. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like you just turned into a creep. Right. But if you approach it with no place to get, out of pure curiosity, like I don't have any place to get. Like I'm genuinely just like trying to build my network. And if we decide that there is a place to get, then we'll have that conversation. But first, let's just see if we like each other. Let's just see
Right.
if we align on anything, right? So that's awesome, man. Brian,
Yeah.
I
And
really I
I
really
just had
appreciate. Go
I
ahead.
just had one other point.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
what if you approached as well from like a place of generosity where you wanted to figure out what you could give to your community in terms of, hosting a CEU event at your clinic
Mhm.
or,
Or sending a
sponsoring.
referral. Send a
Yeah,
referral.
sending
Right.
referrals. Like, I want to know, what I'm a PT here. Like, what type of patients do you see? Can we help each other out with referrals?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's really a matter of like what value can you provide as well, rather than like, do you want to join my team? When can I hire you? You want to try and think about like what value that you can provide to other people, especially in the recruiting process.
Yeah, I had a person in my network tell me the other day, it's like the law of reciprocity, right? It's like
Mhm.
it's a law. It's a law. It's like Newton's law, right? Like if you continue to give, it will it's impossible for you not to get at some point. Like
Right.
if you focus on the giving, it's like that's also a very very important point. So like just organically adding value to your list is a really powerful tool.
Yeah, for sure.
Brian, like there's so many people who need your help. How do people get in touch with you? Yeah, if somebody needed to wanted to talk about working with you,
Yeah,
how would they
sure.
reach out?
Probably the best way is just through our website. It's careertreenetwork.com. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn as well. So just search for Career Tree Network or Brian Widener on LinkedIn. Those would probably be the best ways. And I'm always happy to chat. I'm not much of a salesperson, so I'm willing to chat about this without any expectation of selling you something. It's fun for me, so I'm happy to help.
Yeah. And if anybody wants an unbiased opinion about what it's like to work with Brian, feel free to reach out to me as well because I actually do work with Brian quite frequently here recently. So you can email me at adam@ptoclub.com. Brian, let's do it again someday.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
That's a lot
Peace
of
out.
fun. Yep. Thank you.